The silver locket was all she had left. Clara's trembling fingers worked the clasp as she stood in the alley behind the Prairie Rose Saloon, considering whether she could trade her mother's final gift for enough coin to buy passage on tomorrow's stage. 3 months of serving whiskey to rowdy miners hadn't been enough to save what she needed. Not with half her wages going to pay off the debt that bastard Edmund had left in her name before he disappeared. The bruise on her cheekbone had finally faded to yellow. But the shame of what he'd done, how he'd used her name to borrow money from dangerous men, still burned fresh. She'd been standing there for 20 minutes, watching the pawn shop across the muddy street, when she heard boots on the wooden planks behind her. Clara spun, her heart hammering, expecting one of Blackwell's collectors. Instead, she found herself looking up, way up, at a man who seemed carved from the same granite as the mountains surrounding Silver Creek. He wore a simple work shirt that strained across shoulders broad enough to carry fence posts, and his sun-darkened face held eyes the color of winter sky. Before we continue with Clara and this mysterious rancher's story, I want to ask you something important. If you're enjoying this tale, would you take just a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like? It truly means so much to us and helps us bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? Drop a comment and let me know. "You're the new girl at the saloon," he said, his voice like creek stones rolling. It wasn't a question. "Saw you through the window. You look like you're about to do something desperate." Clara clutched the locket tighter, lifting her chin despite the fear coursing through her. "That's none of your concern, sir. Name's Jacob Mercer. I own the cattle ranch 5 miles north." He gestured toward the pawn shop. "And I'm making it my concern because I've seen that look before. Whatever you're running from, selling your memories won't fix it." "You don't know anything about me," she whispered, hating how her voice cracked. "I know enough." Jacob's gaze dropped to her wrist, where a faded rope burn still showed. "I know someone hurt you. I know you're working yourself to the bone at that saloon, and it still ain't enough. And I know you got more pride than sense if you're considering walking into Sal's pawn shop. He'd give you $1 for something worth 50, then sell your story to anyone who'd listen." Clara's breath caught. He was right about all of it, and the certainty in his voice made something inside her chest crack open. "Then what do you suggest? I need money for the stage. I need to leave before." She stopped herself, biting her lip hard enough to taste copper. "Before the men your husband owed come collecting?" Jacob's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those winter eyes, something that looked like understanding. "Already heard about that. Blackwell's men have been asking around town about Edmund Porter's widow." The world tilted. Clara's back hit the wall behind her, the rough wood catching on her worn dress. "How did you?" "Small town. People talk." He took a step closer, and Clara noticed the way he moved. Deliberate, careful, like he was approaching a spooked horse. "I also heard Edmund ran off to California 6 weeks ago, leaving you with his debts and no way to pay. That about right?" Tears burned hot behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "He said he loved me. He said we'd build a life together. Instead, he borrowed money using my name as collateral, gambled it all away, and disappeared in the night like a coward." The words tasted bitter. "The men he owes don't care that I never saw a cent. They want their money, and they've made it clear they'll take it however they can." Jacob was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "How much?" $200. It might as well have been 2,000. I have 43 saved. The stage ticket is 20. I thought if I could just get to Denver, I could start over, find work somewhere he hasn't ruined my name. That's not a plan. That's running. Jacob reached into his pocket, and Clara tensed, but he only pulled out a worn leather billfold. I've got a different proposition. I don't, she started, preparing to defend what little dignity she had left. Not that kind. He cut her off, his jaw tightening. I need someone to manage my household. My housekeeper quit 2 months ago to live with her daughter in Cheyenne, and the place is falling apart. I can offer room, board, and $50 a month. 6 months of work would clear your debt and give you a fresh start with money in your pocket. Clara stared at him, searching for the trap, the hidden price. Men didn't make offers like this without expecting something. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because I remember what it's like to have no options. Something dark passed over his face. And because no one should have to pay for another person's mistakes. What Edmund did wasn't your fault. The simple statement, delivered without pity or judgment, nearly undid her. I don't take charity. Good, because I'm not offering it. I need help. You need safety and wages. That's business. Jacob held out his hand, rough with calluses and scars. But I'll make you a promise right now. You work for me, you're under my protection. Blackwell's men won't touch you. And if you decide you want to leave after 6 months, I'll give you a train ticket to anywhere you want to go. No questions asked. Clara looked at his outstretched hand, then back at the pawn shop across the street. She thought of the locket, of her mother's face the last time she'd seen her alive. She thought of Edmund's lies, of the way Blackwell's enforcer had grabbed her arm last week and told her time was running out. She thought of the bruises, the fear, the bone-deep exhaustion of always looking over her shoulder. Then she thought of winter sky eyes and a voice that promised safety without demanding surrender. She took his hand. His palm was warm, his grip firm but careful. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, Mr. Mercer, you have a deal." "Jacob," he corrected, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "If you're going to live under my roof, we can skip the formalities." He released her hand and turned toward the street. "Come on, we'll get your things from wherever you're staying, and I'll take you to the ranch tonight. Safer than waiting till morning. I'm at the boarding house on 3rd Street. But Mr. Jacob," she hurried after him, her worn boots splashing through puddles. "Why does it matter if we leave tonight or tomorrow?" He glanced back at her, and in the lamplight from the saloon window, she saw the hard set of his jaw. "Because Blackwell's men are drinking inside that saloon right now, and they've been asking about you all evening. We leave now, or we might not get the chance." The Mercer Ranch sprawled across a valley that looked silver in the moonlight, with mountains rising like sentinels on 3 sides. The house itself was larger than Clara expected, a solid 2-story structure with a wide porch and glass windows that must have cost a fortune to transport this far into Colorado territory. Barns and outbuildings dotted the property, and even in the darkness, she could see the careful organization of a man who took pride in his land. "It's beautiful," she murmured as Jacob helped her down from the wagon. His hands at her waist were gentle, spanning nearly her entire ribcage, and he set her on her feet with the same care he'd shown all evening. "It's home," he said simply, grabbing her small bag. Everything she owned fit in one carpet sack. "Needs work, though. You'll see in the daylight." Inside, he lit lamps that revealed a spacious front room with sturdy furniture and a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. Everything was clean but neglected. No curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floors, none of the small touches that made a house welcoming. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the right," Jacob said, setting her bag at the foot of the stairs. "Mine's at the end of the hall." Bathrooms between them. Had indoor plumbing installed last year. Kitchens through there. Make yourself at home. Clara followed his pointing finger, taking in the space that would be hers for the next 6 months. "When do you want me to start?" "Tomorrow's soon enough. Tonight you should rest." He moved toward the kitchen, then paused. "You hungry? I can put together something." She was starving. She'd skipped dinner to avoid the saloon when Blackwell's men arrived, but the kindness in the offer made her throat tight. "I can cook. That's part of what you're paying me for, isn't it?" "Not tonight, it isn't." Jacob's tone left no room for argument. "Sit. I'll handle it." Clara perched on the edge of a sturdy wooden chair, watching through the doorway as he moved around the kitchen with surprising efficiency. He built up the fire in the stove, sliced bread and cheese, and heated beans in a cast-iron pot. The domestic scene was so at odds with his size and obvious strength that she found herself smiling despite everything. "Something funny?" he called out. "No, She searched for words. "I've never met a rancher who cooked his own meals." "Had to learn after Sarah died." He said it matter-of-factly, but Clara heard the weight behind the words. "My wife, been 3 years now." "I'm sorry," Clara said softly. "I didn't know you were widowed." "Like I said, small town. Thought everyone knew everyone's business." He emerged carrying 2 plates piled with simple food that smelled like heaven. "But yeah, fever took her one winter. We'd only been married 2 years." He set a plate in front of her and took the chair across the table, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Clara tried to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity, but hunger won out. When she glanced up, she found Jacob watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing, just glad to see you eat. You're too thin." He pushed the bread basket toward her. "There's plenty. Ranch has more food than I can eat alone." "You don't have ranch hands?" "4 of them. They live in the bunkhouse, south of the main barn. Good men, all of them. Been with me since before Sarah passed. They take their meals there, though. This house has been just me for a while now." The loneliness in that statement resonated in Clara's chest. She knew about isolation, about rattling around in spaces that felt too empty. "Well," she said carefully, "I guess we're both looking for something to fill the quiet." Jacob's winter eyes met hers across the table, and something passed between them. An understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of one. "Yeah," he agreed quietly. "I guess we are." Clara woke to golden sunlight streaming through curtainless windows and the sound of roosters crowing. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory returned in a rush. The saloon, Edmund's debts, Jacob Mercer's unexpected offer. She dressed quickly in her other outfit, a plain brown dress only slightly less worn than yesterday's, and followed the smell of coffee downstairs. She found Jacob at the kitchen table, already dressed for work, reading a newspaper that had to be at least a week old. "Morning," he said, glancing up. "Coffee's hot. Help yourself." "I should be making your coffee," Clara protested, but she poured herself a cup anyway. The first sip was pure heaven. "You can start your duties after breakfast. This morning, I want to show you around, introduce you to the hands, explain what needs doing." He folded the newspaper and stood, his chair scraping against the floor. But first, there's something we need to discuss. Clara's stomach dropped. Here it came. The real price of his generosity. What is it? Blackwell's going to come looking for you eventually. When he does, I want you to let me handle it. Jacob's expression was serious. Don't try to face him alone. Don't negotiate. Don't give him anything. You understand? But I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling. His tone left no room for argument. You're under my protection now. That means something out here. Clara set down her coffee cup, emotions warring in her chest. Gratitude, fear, and something else. Something that heated her skin when he looked at her like that. All protective intensity. Why are you doing this? Really? Jacob was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. 3 years ago, when Sarah got sick, I was desperate. Rode into Silver Creek in the middle of a snowstorm looking for the doctor. My horse threw a shoe on the way, and I was stranded, watching my wife die slowly while I couldn't do a damn thing to help. A man named Thomas Quinn found me on the road. He gave me his horse, no questions asked, and told me to bring it back when I could. He paused, his jaw working. I made it back in time. Sarah lived another 6 weeks because of that. Thomas never asked for anything in return, never held it over me. Just said that's what neighbors do. Jacob's eyes refocused on Clara. I can't bring Sarah back. Can't fix what happened. But I can help someone else who's desperate. So that's what I'm doing. Clara's throat burned with unshed tears. Thomas Quinn sounds like a good man. He was. Died last spring. Jacob cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the emotion in the room. Anyway, that's why. Now, you ready to see what you've gotten yourself into? The ranch tour took most of the morning. Jacob introduced her to his hands. Miguel, a weathered Mexican vaquero with kind eyes. James, a young black cowboy with a ready smile. Thomas, named for Quinn, Jacob admitted. A grizzled former soldier. And Red, whose actual name was Patrick, but whose copper hair made the nickname inevitable. All 4 men tipped their hats respectfully and welcomed her without any of the leering she'd endured at the saloon. "Boss told us about your situation," Miguel said bluntly when Jacob stepped away to check on a fence repair. "Just want you to know, anyone gives you trouble, you got 4 more protectors besides him." 5, counting me, called James from where he was brushing down a magnificent black stallion. And I'm a hell of a shot. Their easy acceptance, offered without question or judgment, made Clara's eyes sting again. "Thank you," she managed. "That means more than you know." The house tour came last. Jacob walked her through every room, pointing out what needed attention. The parlor needed curtains. The dining room needed the good china washed. It had been in the cabinet untouched since Sarah's death. The study needed organizing. Every bedroom except his needed fresh linens and airing out. "It's a lot of work," he admitted, showing her the large pantry stocked with provisions. "I'll understand if you want to renegotiate the wages." Clara ran her hand along a dusty shelf, already mentally organizing the space. "No renegotiation needed. I can handle this." She turned to face him. "But I need to ask, what exactly happened with your last housekeeper? Why did she really leave?" Jacob leaned against the doorframe, his large frame filling the space. "Martha was Sarah's aunt. She stayed on after to help me keep things running, but her daughter in Cheyenne had twins and needed help. I told her to go. Family comes first." "You didn't try to hire anyone else?" His expression shuddered slightly. "Tried. 3 different women. None of them worked out." "Why not?" "First one was afraid of me." He said it flatly. without emotion, but Clara heard the hurt underneath. Lasted 2 days before she quit. Second one thought the job came with different duties than cooking and cleaning. Third one couldn't stop talking about Sarah, comparing everything I did to what Sarah would have wanted. After that, I gave up. Clara studied him, this massive man with gentle hands and sad eyes who'd saved her from her own desperation. "I'm not afraid of you," she said quietly, "and I'm not looking for anything beyond what you offered. As for Sarah, I never knew her. I can't compare you to a memory." Something shifted in Jacob's face, a tension easing that she hadn't realized he was carrying. "Good," he said simply. "That's good." The first week passed in a blur of hard work. Clara threw herself into making the house a home again, scrubbing and organizing with a fierce determination that had as much to do with proving her worth as creating order. Jacob kept his distance, mostly, leaving early to work the ranch and returning at sunset for whatever dinner she'd prepared. But there were moments, small, charged moments, that Clara found herself thinking about late at night in her room. Like when she'd been struggling to hang curtains in the parlor, and he'd appeared without a word, lifting her up easily so she could reach the rod. His hands at her waist had been warm even through her dress, and when he'd set her down, they'd been standing close enough that she could smell sage and leather and something uniquely him. Or when she'd burned her hand on a pot and he'd grabbed her wrist, plunging it into cool water before she could protest. He'd held it there, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her inner wrist, while his winter eyes searched her face with such concern that her breath had caught. "Go slow," he'd murmured. "Give it time to stop hurting." The words had felt weighted with more than just concern for her burn. Or late one evening, when she'd found him in his study, staring at a small portrait of a smiling, dark-haired woman. Sarah, clearly. Clara had started to retreat, but he'd called her back. "Tell me something," he'd said, his voice rougher than usual. "Do you ever stop missing them, the people you've lost?" Clara had thought of her mother, of the girl she'd been before Edmund's betrayal. "No," she'd answered honestly. "But the missing becomes different, less sharp, more like an old scar than a fresh wound." He'd nodded slowly, still looking at Sarah's portrait. "I keep waiting for that, the less sharp part." Clara had crossed the room without thinking, drawn by the naked pain in his voice. "You loved her very much." "I did." It set the portrait down and looked at Clara, really looked at her, in a way that made heat bloom in her stomach. "But loving someone who's gone doesn't mean you stop being alive. Took me 3 years to figure that out." The moment had stretched between them, heavy with possibility, until Jacob had cleared his throat and stepped back. "It's late. You should get some rest." Clara had fled to her room, her heart pounding, unsure what had just happened, but certain that something had shifted between them. The following Sunday, Jacob asked if she wanted to ride with him to check on the north pasture. "The hands can manage things here for an afternoon," he'd said, "and you've been working yourself to the bone all week. You should see more of the ranch than just the house." Clara had never been comfortable on horses. Edmund had mocked her fear of them, but something about the way Jacob asked made her want to try. He'd saddled a gentle mare named Daisy and spent an hour teaching Clara the basics, his patient instructions and steady hands giving her confidence she'd never felt before. "Relax your grip," he'd instructed, standing beside Daisy with one hand on the mare's neck and the other on Clara's leg, adjusting her position. She can feel your tension. Trust her, and she'll trust you." "Easy for you to say," Clara had muttered, but she'd forced her white-knuckled grip on the saddle horn to loosen. "There you go." Jacob's hand had moved from her leg to the small of her back, warm even through her riding dress. "Just like that. See? You're a natural." She wasn't, but his praise made her feel like she could be. They'd ridden out into the valley, Jacob pointing out landmarks and explaining the ranch's operations. His love for the land was evident in every word, and Clara found herself captivated not just by the scenery, but by the way his face came alive when he talked about it. "This was all government land before the war," he'd explained as they paused on a ridge overlooking the valley. "I bought it piece by piece, built it into what it is now. Sarah used to say I loved this ranch more than I loved her." "Did you?" Clara had asked before she could stop herself. Jacob had been quiet for a long moment. "No, but I think I loved what it represented. Permanence, stability, a future that couldn't be taken away by sickness or war or bad luck. I was wrong about that last part." Clara had understood that sentiment bone deep. "Edmund represented safety to me. I thought if I married him, I'd never have to be afraid again." She'd laughed bitterly. "Turns out, I married the thing I should have been afraid of all along. He hurt you. It wasn't a question." Clara had stared out at the mountains, her hands tightening on the reins, mostly with words and indifference. But once, she'd stopped, the memory sticking in her throat. "Once," Jacob had prompted gently. "Once, when I questioned where all our money was going, he grabbed my wrist so hard it bruised. Told me I didn't have a right to question him, that everything I had was because of him." The words came out small, ashamed. "I left the next day, but the debt was already in my name. He'd forged my signature on the loan papers." Jacob's hands had clenched on his saddle horn hard enough to make the leather creak. "If I ever see Edmund Porter, I'm going to kill him." He'd said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that Clara had believed him absolutely. And instead of being frightened by the violence in his tone, she'd felt protected. Safe in a way she'd never felt with Edmund's pretty words and empty promises. "Don't," she'd said softly. "He's not worth it, and I need you here, not in jail for murder." Jacob had turned to look at her then, his winter eyes intense. "You need me?" The question had hung in the mountain air between them, weighted with meaning neither of them was quite ready to name. Clara had felt her cheeks heat. "I need this job, this fresh start you've given me." "Right," Jacob had said after a moment. "The job." But his eyes had said something different. 3 weeks into Clara's employment, the fragile peace shattered. She'd been in town picking up supplies. Miguel had driven her in the wagon and was waiting while she finished at the general store, when a hand grabbed her arm and spun her around. "There you are, Mrs. Porter." Clara's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. Luther Kane, Blackwell's chief enforcer. A scarred, cruel-faced man who'd made her skin crawl every time he'd come into the saloon. "Let go of me," she said, proud that her voice only shook a little. "Not until we settle accounts." Luther's grip tightened painfully. "You owe Mr. Blackwell $200. He's been real patient, but patience has its limits." "I don't owe him anything. My husband, ex-husband, borrowed money with your name on the paper. That makes it your debt." Luther leaned close enough that she could smell whiskey and tobacco. "Now, you can pay with money, or we can discuss other arrangements." The threat was clear, and Clara's vision started to tunnel. She was back in that boarding house room, Edmund's hand on her wrist, his voice telling her she was his property. "I suggest you remove your hand from the lady." Miguel's voice cut through Clara's panic. The vaquero stood 6 feet away, his posture deceptively relaxed, but his hand rested on the pistol at his hip. "This ain't your business, ranch hand." Luther sneered, but his grip on Clara loosened slightly. "The lady works for Mr. Mercer. That makes it his business, which makes it mine." Miguel's eyes were hard as flint. "And I don't think you want to explain to Blackwell why you started a war with Jacob Mercer over $200. Something flickered in Luther's expression. Not quite fear, but calculation. Everyone in Silver Creek knew Jacob Mercer, knew he was fair but hard, a man who kept his word and expected others to do the same, a man with enough money and influence to make trouble for someone like Blackwell. "This ain't over," Luther said, releasing Clara with a shove that nearly sent her into a display of canned goods. "Mr. Blackwell wants his money by the end of the month, or there'll be consequences." He stalked out, leaving Clara shaking and Miguel's gentle hand on her shoulder. "You okay, Senora?" "Yes, thank you, Miguel." Clara forced her spine straight, refusing to crumble in the middle of the general store. "We should finish the shopping and get home." But when they arrived back at the ranch an hour later, Jacob took one look at her face and knew something had happened. He pulled Miguel aside while Clara carried supplies into the kitchen, and she could hear their low, urgent conversation through the window. 5 minutes later, Jacob appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Tell me what happened." Clara set down the sack of flour she'd been holding and relayed the confrontation, watching Jacob's expression grow darker with every word. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. "End of the month," he said. "Yes, but Jacob, I can't let you pay my debt. You're not letting me do anything. I'm making a business decision." His tone was flat, controlled, but Clara could see the rage simmering beneath. "Tomorrow, I'm riding into town and settling this. Blackwell will get his money, and you'll be free of Edmund Porter's mistakes." "No!" Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. "I told you, I don't take charity. And I told you it's not charity." Jacob crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "It's protection. It's me keeping my word that no one would hurt you while you're under my roof. $200 is a fortune. It's money." He said it dismissively. "I've got it, you need it, and some bastard put his hands on you today because of it. That makes it my problem to solve." "Why?" Clara demanded, frustration and fear and something else boiling over. "Why does my problem have to be yours? Why do you care so much about some broken widow you barely know?" "Because I—" Jacob stopped abruptly, his hands clenching at his sides. "Because I do. That's all." But it wasn't all. Clara could see it in his face, in the way his eyes dropped to her lips before snapping back up. Could feel it in the charged air between them, in the way her heart hammered against her ribs. "Jacob," she whispered. "I should go check on the horses," he said roughly, stepping back so quickly he nearly knocked over a chair. "Make sure they're settled for the night." He was gone before she could respond, leaving Clara alone in the kitchen with her heart in her throat and the certain knowledge that something between them had fundamentally changed. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house creak and settle around her. She kept thinking about the look in Jacob's eyes, about the way he'd almost said something before cutting himself off. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hall. Jacob's distinctive tread, heavy but careful. They paused outside her door for so long that Clara held her breath, wondering if he'd knock. But after a moment, they continued down the hall to his room. She told herself she was relieved. She knew she was lying. The next morning, Jacob was already gone when Clara came downstairs. Miguel found her in the kitchen and explained that the boss had ridden to Silver Creek before dawn. "He's settling things with Blackwell," the vaquero said. "Should be back by noon." But noon came and went with no sign of Jacob. Clara tried to focus on her work, but every sound made her jump. Every approaching horse set her heart racing. By the time the sun started lowering, she'd worn a path in the parlor rug from pacing. When Jacob finally rode in just before sunset, Clara burst out onto the porch before she could stop herself. He dismounted slowly, moving like something hurt, and she saw the bruise darkening his jaw and the split in his knuckle. "What happened?" she demanded, hurrying down the steps. "It's handled." Jacob handed his horse's reins to James, who'd appeared from the barn. "Blackwell's got his money. You're clear." "You're hurt." "It's nothing." But he winced as he climbed the porch steps, and Clara saw him favor his left side. Without thinking, she grabbed his arm. "Inside, now, let me see." "Clara, don't argue with me, Jacob Mercer." She used her sternest voice, the one that had cowed rowdy drunks at the saloon. "You just fought someone because of my problems. The least you can do is let me patch you up." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. But he let her tug him into the house and push him into a kitchen chair. "Shirt off," she ordered, pumping water to heat for cleaning. "I don't think—" "Shirt off." Clara fixed him with a look. "I've seen bruises before, Jacob. I'm not some delicate flower who'll faint at the sight." He sighed, but obeyed, unbuttoning his shirt with his good hand and shrugging out of it. Clara's breath caught, despite her brave words. She'd known he was strong, had seen the evidence in how easily he lifted heavy things, in the breadth of his shoulders. But seeing him shirtless was different. His chest and arms were heavily muscled, yes, but it was the scars that captured her attention. Dozens of them, some old and faded, others more recent. A puckered bullet wound below his ribs, long knife scars across his back, the marks of a man who'd lived a hard life and survived it. "Civil War," he said quietly, watching her expression. "And a few bad decisions in the years after. I wasn't always a peaceful rancher." Clara wet a cloth and began gently cleaning the dried blood from his knuckles. "What happened with Blackwell?" Walked into his office and put $200 on his desk. "Told him the debt was paid and you were under my protection." Jacob's jaw tightened. He tried to argue, said there was interest. I explained that there wasn't. Explained how? Thoroughly. His mouth quirked slightly. Luther Kane decided to involve himself in the discussion. That went poorly for him. Clara's hands stilled on his. "You didn't kill him?" "No, but he won't be grabbing women in the street again anytime soon." Jacob caught her hand when she started to pull away. "I'd do it again, Clara. I want you to know that. I'd do a hell of a lot worse if it meant keeping you safe." His thumb traced circles on her inner wrist, exactly like he'd done when she'd burned her hand, and Clara's breath shortened. They were so close she could see the gold flecks in his winter eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his bare chest. "Why?" she whispered. "Tell me why you care so much." Jacob's free hand came up to cup her face, his calloused palm gentle against her cheek. "Because when I look at you, I feel alive again. Because you make this empty house feel like a home. Because somewhere between showing you how to hang curtains and teaching you to ride, I started falling for you, and I can't seem to stop. Clara's heart hammered so hard she was certain he could hear it. Jacob, I'm not whole. I'm broken pieces of who I used to be. I see a woman worth saving, he interrupted. I see someone strong enough to walk away from a bad situation, brave enough to start over, proud enough to refuse charity even when she's desperate. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I see someone who makes me want to be better, who makes me believe I deserve a second chance at happiness. I'm scared, Clara admitted. Edmund made me promises too, and look how that ended. I'm not Edmund. Jacob's voice was firm. I'll die before I hurt you, Clara. That's my promise, and I keep my promises. She believed him. God help her. She believed him absolutely. I'm scared of that too, she whispered, of caring about someone again, of giving them the power to destroy me. Then we'll go slow, Jacob said, as slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere. This ranch isn't going anywhere. We've got time. Clara felt something inside her chest, something that had been locked tight since Edmund's betrayal, begin to loosen. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you to stay. Not as my housekeeper, though you're damn good at it. As, he paused, seeming to search for words, as whatever you want to be. Friend, companion, partner. No pressure, no expectations. Just stay. It should have been too much, too soon. But Clara found herself leaning into his touch, into the solid warmth of him. I don't know how to do this, how to trust again. Neither do I, Jacob admitted. Haven't let anyone close since Sarah died. But I want to try, if you do. Clara looked at this man who'd saved her, who'd fought for her, who was offering her time and patience and a chance to heal. She thought about how he made her laugh while teaching her to ride, how he praised her cooking like it was the finest meal he'd ever eaten, how he'd looked at her scarred wrist with understanding, not pity. I want to try, she said. Jacob's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Yeah? Yeah. Clara found herself smiling back. But you're going to have to be patient with me. I'm probably going to be difficult and stubborn, and he kissed her. It was gentle, careful, nothing like Edmund's demanding possession. Jacob kissed her like she was precious, like he was afraid she'd break, his hand still cradling her face, while his split knuckles rested against her waist. Clara made a sound low in her throat and leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his bare shoulders. The kiss deepened slightly, but Jacob kept it controlled, kept it sweet, until they were both breathless. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with want, but also concern. Too much? No. Clara's voice came out husky. Not enough. His sharp intake of breath made her bold. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to the bruise on his jaw, then to the scar below his collarbone, then to the healed bullet wound on his ribs, kissing his scars the way he'd metaphorically kissed hers. Clara, Jacob groaned, his hand tightening on her waist. If you keep doing that... What? She looked up at him through her lashes, feeling powerful in a way she never had with Edmund. What will you do? I'll forget I promised to go slow. His voice was rough gravel. I'll forget I'm supposed to be a gentleman. A knock on the kitchen door made them spring apart. James stood on the other side, his expression carefully neutral. Sorry, boss, but we've got a problem with the fence line on the West Ridge. Need you to take a look before dark. Jacob cursed under his breath, then louder when he tried to stand and his bruised ribs protested. Give me 5 minutes. When James left, Jacob turned back to Clara with an expression of pure frustration. To be continued? To be continued, she agreed, helping him ease his shirt back on. But Jacob, thank you for everything. He caught her hand and brought it to his lips, kissing her knuckles. Thank me by staying. That's all I want. Clara watched him walk out to deal with ranch business, her hands still tingling from his lips, her heart full of possibility for the first time in years. The next few weeks felt like walking on a wire. Clara and Jacob circled each other carefully, learning each other's boundaries. He'd brush past her in the kitchen and let his hand linger on her back. She'd lean against him while they watched the sunset from the porch. Small touches, building trust. The ranch hands noticed, of course. Miguel took to humming cheerful Mexican love songs while he worked. James and Thomas exchanged significant looks whenever Jacob and Clara were in the same room. Red just grinned like he'd won a bet. About damn time, he said one afternoon when he came in for water and found Jacob helping Clara reach a high shelf, his hands spanning her waist. House feels less haunted with some happiness in it. Jacob shot him a look, but didn't let go of Clara. Don't you have cattle to tend? Going. Red tipped his hat to Clara. You're good for him, ma'am. Keep him human. After he left, Clara twisted in Jacob's grip to look up at him. Was I that obvious? That I'm crazy about you? Jacob's winter eyes were warm. Yeah, pretty obvious. Also, don't care who knows it. Clara's heart stuttered. They'd been courting, because that's what this was, she realized. Old-fashioned courting. For weeks. But he'd never said it quite so plainly before. I'm crazy about you too, she admitted, in case that wasn't obvious. Jacob's response was to lift her off her feet and kiss her soundly, making her laugh against his mouth. This was so different from Edmund's moods, from his manipulation. With Jacob, she felt safe enough to be happy, safe enough to want. That evening, after dinner, they sat together on the porch swing. Clara had her head on Jacob's shoulder, his arm around her waist, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. I never thanked you properly, Clara said quietly, for paying off the debt, for fighting for me, for giving me a home. You thank me every day. Jacob's lips pressed against her hair. Every time you smile, every time you fill this house with light, every time you let me hold you like this. I was so broken when you found me, Clara continued. I didn't think I'd ever feel whole again. You're not broken, you're wounded. There's a difference. Jacob's hand found hers, threading their fingers together. Wounds heal. Broken things stay broken. Clara turned her face into his neck, breathing in his scent. What about you? Are you healed? Getting there. His voice rumbled in his chest. You help. A lot. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the swing creaking gently. Then Jacob said, There's something I need to tell you. Clara's stomach tightened. What is it? Edmund's in Denver. She went rigid. How do you know? Got a telegraph today from a contact I have there. Porter's been asking around about you, trying to find out where you went. Jacob's arm tightened around her. He's claiming you stole money from him, and he wants it back. Fear, cold and familiar, washed through Clara. He's going to come here. Probably. Jacob didn't lie to her, didn't try to pretend it would be fine. But Clara, look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. He can't hurt you anymore. I won't let him. The hands won't let him. And legally, you don't owe him a damn thing. I made sure of that when I paid Blackwell. Edmund's got no claim on you. You don't know him, Clara whispered. He's charming and persuasive and I'm none of those things, Jacob interrupted. But I'm stubborn as hell, mean when I need to be, and very, very protective of what's mine. I'm not property. No, you're not. You're a person who chose to be here, who chose me." His hand cupped her face. "But that doesn't mean I won't defend you with everything I have. Edmund Porter shows up at my ranch. He's going to learn real fast what a mistake that is." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she could handle it herself. But the truth was, she was terrified of facing Edmund again, of falling back into his web of manipulation. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know." Jacob kissed her forehead. "But you're not alone anymore. That's the difference." Edmund arrived 3 days later, driving a hired buggy and dressed in a fancy suit that Clara recognized as one she'd helped him pick out back when she'd still believed his lies. He was handsome in that polished, practiced way. Golden hair, blue eyes, a smile that had once made her heart flutter, and now made her stomach turn. Clara saw him coming from the kitchen window and froze. Jacob was out in the far pasture with most of the hands. It was just her and Thomas, who was in the barn. Edmund tied up the buggy and approached the house with the confidence of someone who thought the world owed him favors. When Clara didn't come out, he knocked on the door. "Clara, I know you're in there. I just want to talk." She stood in the kitchen, hands pressed flat on the counter, trying to control her breathing. She could do this. She was stronger now. She had people who cared about her. "Clara, please, I'm your husband. You can't hide from me forever." "Ex-husband," she called back, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "And I'm not hiding. I'm simply choosing not to open the door to someone who stole from me, abandoned me, and left me to pay for his mistakes. It was a misunderstanding. The business venture went bad. It wasn't my fault. But if you come back with me, we can start over. I've got a new opportunity in San Francisco." "No." Clara moved to the door, but kept it closed. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Edmund. I'm not your property. I never was. You're my wife." His voice hardened with the edge she remembered, the one that used to make her flinch. "You took vows, till death do us part. Those vows became void the moment you forged my signature and disappeared." Clara's hands balled into fists. "I filed for divorce in Silver Creek. It'll be final in 2 months. You have no claim on me." "The hell I don't. You're wearing clothes I bought, living off money I stole from innocent people," Clara cut in. "I'm wearing a dress I bought with my own wages from honest work. I'm living on a ranch where I'm valued and respected. I'm building a life you can't touch." With that rancher, Edmund's laugh was ugly. "You think he actually cares about you? He's using you, same as any man would. At least with me." The door opened, but it wasn't Clara. Jacob stood in the frame, having appeared silently from around the side of the house, and his expression made Edmund take an involuntary step back. "At least with you, what?" Jacob's voice was deadly quiet. "You'd keep lying to her, keep stealing from her, keep bruising her wrists and calling it love? This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife, and she already told you no." Jacob moved onto the porch, and Edmund backed down the steps. "Now I'm telling you to leave. This is private property. You're not welcome here, and if you come back, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." "You can't. I can and I will." Jacob descended the steps slowly, like a mountain cat stalking prey. "But before you go, let me make something crystal clear. Clara is under my protection. That means if you contact her, threaten her, or even look at her sideways, you'll answer to me. And I'm a lot less civilized than the law." Edmund looked between Jacob and Clara, who'd appeared in the doorway behind the larger man. She watched her ex-husband's face cycle through calculations, weighing his options, looking for an angle. "You think you're better than me?" Edmund said finally, his pretty face twisting with spite. "You're just a dirt farmer who bought himself a whore." Jacob's fist took him in the jaw before he could finish the sentence. Edmund went down hard, landing in the dust, and Jacob stood over him with murder in his eyes. "Get up," Jacob said softly, "so I can put you down again." "Jacob, no!" Clara hurried down the steps and grabbed his arm. Not because she cared about Edmund's well-being, but because she could see the rage in Jacob's stance. The kind of rage that didn't stop with one punch. "He's not worth it. Please." Jacob looked at her, then back at Edmund, who was struggling to sit up and nursing what would be a spectacular bruise. "You're right." He took a breath, visibly controlling himself. "He's not." To Edmund, he said, "You've got 10 seconds to get in that buggy and leave. If you're still here after that, I'm getting my rifle." Edmund scrambled to his feet and ran for the buggy, stumbling once before hauling himself up. He grabbed the reins with shaking hands, shooting one last venomous look at Clara. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Both of you." "The only thing I regret," Clara called back, surprised by her own boldness, "is wasting 2 years of my life believing your lies. Now get off our property before I shoot you myself." Edmund snapped the reins, and the buggy lurched away in a cloud of dust. Clara watched until it disappeared around the bend, her heart pounding, but her spine straight. Then she turned to Jacob, who was flexing his split knuckles and looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Our property," he said quietly. Clara felt heat flood her cheeks. "That just came out. I didn't mean to presume." "Don't apologize." Jacob closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. "I liked hearing you say it." Clara buried her face in his chest, breathing hard. "I was so scared. When I saw him coming, I froze, and I hated myself for it." "You didn't freeze," Jacob interrupted, his hand smoothing down her back. "You stood your ground. You told him no. You were so damn brave." "I didn't feel brave." "Bravery isn't not being scared. It's being terrified and doing it anyway." He kissed the top of her head. "You did that, Clara. You faced the man who hurt you and told him to go to hell. I'm so proud of you." Clara's eyes burned with tears, but they weren't tears of fear anymore. They were relief, pride, and something deeper. "Thank you for coming back when you did. Thomas sent James to get me the second that buggy pulled up." Jacob's voice was rough. "I would have killed him if he'd touched you, just so you know." "I know." Clara tilted her head back to look up at him. "And I would have let you." Jacob's laugh was startled. "Hell, woman, what am I going to do with you?" "Keep me," Clara said, emboldened by adrenaline and emotion and the feel of his arms around her. "If you want to." His winter eyes went dark. "I want to. More than I'd wanted anything in 3 years." His thumb traced her lower lip. "But Clara, I need to know, is this real for you? Or is it just that I'm safe compared to Edmund? Because I need it to be real." Clara's answer was to pull his face down to hers and kiss him with everything she felt. Gratitude, desire, the beginning of something that felt dangerously close to love. Jacob groaned and gathered her closer, one hand tangling in her hair while the other spanned her waist, and Clara felt wanted in a way she'd never experienced. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jacob rested his forehead against hers. That felt real. "It is real," Clara confirmed. "You're real. This is real. And I don't want to go slow anymore, Jacob. I want—" She paused, suddenly shy. "What do you want?" His voice was rough silk. "You," Clara said simply. "All of you. Not as my employer or my protector. As my, she searched for the word. Partner, Jacob supplied. Lover? Future husband? Clara's breath caught. Yes, all of those. If you… Yes, Jacob said immediately. Hell yes. But Clara, the divorce isn't final yet. We can't… I know, but when it is, Clara… She cupped his face, feeling the rough stubble under her palms. When it is, I want to marry you, if you'll have me. Jacob's smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. If I'll have you? Clara, I've wanted you since the day you took my hand in that alley and trusted me when you had no reason to. He kissed her again, softer this time. 2 months. I can wait 2 months to make you my wife properly. 2 months, Clara agreed, and then no more waiting. The 2 months crawled by and flew past simultaneously. Clara marked off days on the calendar, and each X brought her closer to freedom and further from the shadow Edmund had cast over her life. The divorce papers came through exactly 60 days later. Clara held the official document with shaking hands, reading the words that legally severed her from her past mistakes. You're free, Jacob said quietly, reading over her shoulder. I'm free, Clara echoed, feeling the truth of it sink into her bones. She turned to face him. So what now? Jacob took the papers from her and set them carefully on the table. Then he dropped to one knee right there in the kitchen, pulling a simple gold band from his pocket. Marry me, he said. Not because you need protection or a roof over your head. Not because I saved you or you're grateful. Marry me because I love you, Clara. Because you've made me believe in second chances. Because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. Clara's vision blurred with tears. Yes, she choked out. Yes, Jacob, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, like it had always been meant for her, and stood to kiss her. This kiss was different from all the others. It was a promise, a beginning, the start of something permanent. When? Jacob asked against her lips. Tomorrow, Clara said immediately. I don't want to wait anymore. Tomorrow, Jacob agreed. They were married the next afternoon in Silver Creek Small Church, with Miguel, James, Thomas, and Red standing as witnesses. Clara wore a simple cream dress she'd sewn herself, and Jacob wore his best suit and a look of pure happiness. The ceremony was short and sweet. When the minister said, "You may kiss your bride," Jacob cupped Clara's face and kissed her like she was everything he'd ever wanted, like she was home. Together, he whispered against her lips, repeating the word that had become their talisman. Together, Clara agreed. The celebration at the ranch afterward was boisterous, with the hands providing music and far too much whiskey. Miguel played guitar, while Red sang bawdy songs that made Clara laugh until her sides hurt. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt surrounded by family. As the sun set, Jacob pulled her away from the party, leading her upstairs to their room. No longer his room, but theirs. Clara's stomach fluttered with nerves and anticipation. You okay? Jacob asked, reading her expression. More than okay. Clara reached up to loosen his tie. But Jacob, I need you to know. Edmund never… She struggled for words. It was never good with him. He didn't care if I… Shh. Jacob caught her hands, bringing them to his lips. Tonight isn't about him. It's about us. And Clara. His eyes were soft. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for. I'm ready, Clara said, meaning it. I've been ready. I just don't want to disappoint you. Jacob laughed softly. That's not possible. He started unbuttoning her dress with careful fingers. You want to know what I want? I want to learn every sound you make. I want to know what makes you gasp and what makes you sigh. I want to memorize every inch of your skin." He paused, his hands stilling. "And I want you to tell me if anything hurts or doesn't feel right. Promise me." "I promise," Clara breathed. "Good." Jacob's hands resumed their work, and Clara's dress pooled at her feet. "Because I'll die before I hurt you." Clara smiled at the familiar words. His promise, worn smooth like a river stone. "I know," she said. "I believe you." What followed was revelation. Jacob touched her with reverence, mapping her body like sacred geography. Every kiss landed somewhere new: her throat, her collarbone, the sensitive skin below her ear. His hands were gentle but sure, coaxing responses from her body that she'd never known were possible. "Talk to me," he murmured against her skin. "Tell me what you need." "More," Clara gasped, her fingers digging into his shoulders. "Jacob, please, I've got you." His voice was rough with desire and affection. "Just let go, I've got you." And Clara did. She let go of the fear and shame Edmund had layered over her. Let go of the belief that her pleasure didn't matter. Let go and fell into sensation, into Jacob's strong hands and tender words, and the overwhelming rightness of being wanted like this. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in the moonlight, streaming through the window. Clara's head rested on Jacob's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, while his fingers traced lazy patterns on her back. "You okay?" he asked, the same question as earlier, but weighted with different meaning now. "Perfect," Clara said honestly. She tilted her head to look up at him. That was... "Yeah," Jacob agreed, a smile playing at his lips. "It really was." Clara laughed and pressed a kiss to his chest, right over one of his old scars. "I love you," she said. It felt important to say it out loud, to give voice to what she'd been feeling for weeks. Jacob's arm tightened around her. "I love you too. So damn much." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I never thought I'd feel this way again. After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over." "She'd want you to be happy," Clara said gently. "I didn't know her, but I can tell she loved you. And people who love us want us to keep living, even after they're gone." "Yeah." Jacob kissed the top of her head. "She would have liked you. You're both stubborn as hell and twice as brave." Clara smiled in the darkness. "Tell me about her sometime. I want to know about the people who shaped you." "I will," Jacob promised, "but not tonight. Tonight is just for us." "Just us," Clara agreed, snuggling closer. "Together." "Together," Jacob echoed. The following months were the happiest of Clara's life. She and Jacob settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. The ranch thrived under their partnership. Clara managed the house and books, while Jacob handled the cattle and land. They worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word. But it wasn't just work. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs. Jacob taught Clara to ride properly, and she taught him to dance. She introduced him to books she loved, and he showed her constellations on clear nights. They bickered over silly things like whether coffee should be strong or mild, and made up thoroughly afterward. "Don't tell anyone," Clara would whisper sometimes when they were alone, "but I think I might be happy." "Don't tell anyone," Jacob would respond, pulling her close, "but I just need your lips for tonight." It became their private joke, that phrase from the title of their story, a reminder of where they'd started and how far they'd come. One evening, about 6 months into their marriage, Clara realized her monthly bleeding was late, very late. When she confided this to Jacob, his eyes went wide. "You think you're—" "Maybe," Clara said. equal parts terrified and hopeful. It's too early to know for sure, but Jacob picked her up and spun her around, laughing like she'd never heard him laugh before. When he set her down, his hands cradled her face. A baby. We could have a baby. You want this? Clara searched his face. I know we hadn't talked about. I want everything with you, Jacob interrupted. A family, growing old, watching our kids ride these fields. I want all of it. Clara's eyes filled with happy tears. Me too. I want all of it with you. 3 weeks later, the doctor in Silver Creek confirmed what they'd already known. Clara was pregnant. Jacob walked around in a daze for days, looking at his wife with such awe that it made her laugh. I'm just pregnant, Jacob. Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. But you're doing it, he said, like that made all the difference. The pregnancy was rough at first. Clara spent most of the first 3 months sick, but Jacob was patient and attentive. He brought her crackers in bed, rubbed her feet when they swelled, and read to her when she was too tired to keep her eyes open. You're too good to me, Clara said one evening, lying with her head in his lap on the porch swing. Impossible, Jacob replied, running his fingers through her hair. You deserve the world. Their daughter was born on a warm spring morning, arriving after 20 hours of labor that left Clara exhausted but triumphant. Jacob cried when he held her for the first time, this tiny, perfect person they'd created together. What should we name her? Clara asked, watching her husband cradle their daughter with infinite care. Sarah, Jacob said immediately, then paused. If that's okay with you, after your first wife who you loved, Clara finished. It's perfect. Sarah's a beautiful name. They named her Sarah Grace. Sarah for Jacob's lost love, Grace for the second chance they'd both been given. And watching Jacob with his daughter, seeing how gentle his big hands could be, Clara felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. Years passed in a blur of happiness. Sarah grew into a spirited little girl with her father's winter eyes and her mother's determination. She learned to ride before she could properly walk and had the ranch hands wrapped around her tiny finger. When she was 4, Clara gave birth to twin boys, Thomas and Miguel, named for the men who'd become as much family as employees. The ranch prospered. Jacob expanded the herds and added horses to their operation. Clara started a small business selling preserves and baked goods to the growing town of Silver Creek. They built a life that was full and rich and exactly what they'd both been searching for. On their 10th anniversary, Jacob took Clara back to Silver Creek, to the alley behind the Prairie Rose Saloon where they'd first met. Why are we here? Clara asked, looking around at the place that had once represented her lowest point. Because I want to tell you something, Jacob said, taking both her hands. Every day for the past 10 years, I've woken up grateful that I walked past this alley at exactly the right moment. That I saw you standing here, desperate and brave and beautiful. That you trusted me when you had every reason not to. Clara's eyes misted. Jacob, I know we've built a good life, he continued. We've got our kids, our ranch, our friends. But the best thing, the absolute best thing, is you. It's always been you, Clara. You're my second chance, my redemption, my home. You're mine too, Clara said through tears. I was so broken when we met. You helped me become whole again. You did that yourself, Jacob corrected. I just gave you space to heal, and time to trust me. Clara thought back to the woman she'd been, scared, hurt, convinced she'd never be happy again. And then she thought about who she was now. A wife, a mother, a businesswoman, a partner in every sense of the word. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me, for waiting, for loving me." "Always," Jacob promised, pulling her close. "Together, remember?" "Together," Clara agreed. They walked back to their wagon, hand in hand, ready to return to the ranch, to their children, to the life they'd built from desperate beginnings. And Clara knew bone deep that she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not just safety or security, but real, lasting love. The kind of love that healed, the kind that endured, the kind that turned strangers in an alley into soulmates, broken people into whole ones, and a house into a home. The kind of love worth fighting for. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Clara and Jacob's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.